Welcome to the MADA Safety Training YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to discuss jacks and hoists safety, specifically tips for using jacks, stands, hoists, and other devices safely. We're going to talk about floor jacks, hoists, including cherry pickers, chain falls, etc., jack stands, lifting tables, transmission jacks, etc., bumper jacks, and inspection requirements on jacks and hoists. Let's talk about floor jacks. Just a few tips to use floor jacks safely. Must be used only on firm flat surfaces or they must be blocked. Only use a jack with more weight capacity than the vehicle lifted. Make sure that the jack's weight capacity that it is rated for is clearly marked on the jack's body and easily readable. Never use a jack that is damaged, leaking, or needing repair of any type, and always use a jack to lift, not to hold the load. Always support the load with an appropriate rated jack stand, or even wooden cribbing would be sufficient. On hoists, a lot of the same safety precautions apply to hoists as well. There are several different types of hoists that we use in our dealerships, including engine hoists, chain hoists, monorail hoists. You may have called some of those before, heard them called a chain fall type of a hoist. Always check your hoist before you use it. Make sure to look for any broken or bent wheels, damage to the hoist, safety clip on chain hooks. Look for stretched links in the chain, cracks or cuts, or anything of that nature, indicating that the jack, or that the hoist might need to be replaced instead of being used. Always make sure that the hoists are clearly marked with their weight capacity, especially down the adjustable arm of an engine hoist. As the arm extends out on an engine hoist, the weight capacity drops. Make sure that each one of those adjustments is marked with what the rated capacity for that lift or for that hoist is as that arm extends. Always use a hoist rated higher than the weight of the object you are lifting. It's kind of common sense, but the same thing with any kind of jack or lifting table or hoist that you would use. Make sure that the rated weight capacity of that device is higher than the vehicle component or the part of the whatever part you're lifting. And kind of a very important safety point when using overhead lifting devices such as cherry pickers or chain falls, or potentially overhead, is to never go underneath a load suspended on a hoist. Keep your hands, feet, head, all of your body parts clear of suspended loads. Don't sit there working on an engine, hanging on a cherry picker with your legs and your feet underneath it, just in case a load were to fall. Let's talk a little bit about jack stands. The picture in the top right corner of this slide is a situation that we find very frequently when we're doing safety inspections in dealerships, where a technician will throw a jack underneath a car to buzz off a wheel and not put a jack stand underneath it. Again, jacks should only be used to lift loads, not hold loads. They need to be put down on jack stands instead. Jack stands should also be clearly marked with their rated weight capacity, just as jacks and hoists should. Always use a jack stand with a higher weight capacity than what it's going to hold. Don't put a diesel truck on a half-ton Harbor Freight Special jack stand. Make sure you have a jack stand that's heavy enough to support the load of that vehicle without collapsing. 2 or more are better than 1. Provides what we safety nerds like to call redundancy. The likelihood of a vehicle sliding off one jack or one jack stand is pretty high. The likelihood of it sliding off a jack and a jack stand or 2 jack stands goes way down. So it's just a safer operation. If you got an extra jack stand, throw it underneath there. Never use a bent or damaged stand. And remember, it only takes seconds to put a jack stand under a vehicle. Unfortunately, it also takes a second for a car to fall on you if you don't. Lifting tables, transmission jacks, etc. Weight capacity rules and marking are the same as using jacks and hoists and jack stands. Make sure they're marked clearly and use a big enough jack for what you're working with. Use chains and straps that are provided to secure the vehicle components to the jacks. We actually get a lot of injuries to employees because they don't strap a fuel tank or they don't strap a transmission to the jack. It starts to fall, they try to catch it, and then we get a nasty laceration, or we get a pretty nasty and debilitating back injury that the technician's going to have to deal with the rest of his life. Those straps and chains are there for a reason, folks. Make sure that you use them and properly strap down whatever it is you're moving with that jack. Talk a little bit about bumper jacks. These are kind of an older style jack because of the design of most of the vehicles nowadays. We don't see these in use near as often, but we still see them used in some truck shops and some dealerships out in the country where they work on a lot of farm vehicles. A few safety things on these types of jacks. Even though the jack has a quote-unquote safety latch, never ever use it without a jack stand in place. Again, it goes back to that safety nerd term of single point failure. If that vehicle slides off that jack and there's nothing to catch it, an accident's going to occur. Same capacity and weight rating rules apply to these jacks. Make sure it's clearly marked. Make sure you have enough jack for the weight of the vehicle that you're using it on. Never ever try to lift or shake a vehicle on a bumper jack. These jacks hold with compressed air and can shoot out like a spring if the vehicle's lifted or rocked while on the jack. And we did have an injury one time where a technician was smacked in the head when they tried to lift the vehicle manually up off the jack and slide the jack out, and it shot out at him like a coiled spring and hit him in the head. So just a few safety reminders on using bumper jacks. Finally, let's talk about inspection requirements on jacks and hoists. Should they be inspected? How often should they be inspected? Every time you pick one up to use it, you ought to do at least a fast look at the jack. What kind of shape are the wheels in? Are there any obvious leaks? Does it work like it's supposed to? Does it make funky noises when you're trying to use it? Does it not work properly? Do you have to pump it a whole bunch of times and it only comes up a little bit? Is anything bent or damaged or missing on a jack? If it is, don't use it. Make sure to tell your supervisor before you try to use a jack like that. Jacks and hoists really should be inspected by somebody in the dealership every 6 months. According to OSHA requirements, any jack or hoist that travels to a different work site needs to be inspected when it comes back. Jacks and hoists should be briefly checked for condition each time they're used. And then here's a few things, a few items that should be checked to include. Look at the frame of the jack or hoist for any damage, missing components, etc. Again, check the wheels and look for leaks. Make sure the jack or hoist is clearly marked with its rated weight capacity. Look for any unusual noise or maladjustments. Any failure to operate as designed. Check the condition of chains, wire rope, etc. in the event of a hoist, like a cherry picker, which, as you guys know, is what we call an engine hoist, or a chain fall overhead kind of a chain hoist. Look at the conditions of the hooks and the chain on those types of hoists. Look for any kind of cracks, cuts, stretching of the hook mouth, or stretching or deformity of any of the chain links. Look for the safety clip on hooks. Is that little spring-loaded clip on the end still there? That's designed to hold the chain or the strap or whatever's being lifted from sliding out of the hook. Report any issues that you find to your supervisor, and don't use if damaged, leaking, or malfunctioning. Just make sure that you let your supervisor know so that repairs or replacement can be arranged. That's a conclusion of this video on jacks and hoists. We hope everybody has a safe and blessed day.